Hello everyone, my name is Matusha, and today I will be discussing the Eabametoong First Nation and the water quality issues that they face. The purpose of this video is to identify an environmental health problem, in this case, Eabametoong and the issues they face with their water. Hence, this video will be like an educational intervention, informing viewers such as yourselves about this issue. This is an opportunity for you to learn about one of the many common issues Indigenous communities face and how it affects them in terms of their health. Before we get started, I would like to state that the information stated in this video will be cited in the description box below, as well as any other videos and pictures that I utilize that are not my own. Now, onto the video. When we think about water, we know that it is a necessity in one's life. Without it, one's health will deteriorate and this person would eventually die. However, not everyone in the world has access to safe, drinkable water. Hence, in 2010, the United Nations General Assembly voted to recognize that access to water and sanitation is a human right. This human right to water entitles everyone to sufficient, safe, acceptable, physically accessible, and affordable water for use. And if there's an abundance of people who do not have access to this, leaders of these cities, countries, and communities have to help fulfill this human right to water. If we look at the world today, 1 in 9 people lack access to safe water. That is around 785 million people. These include people in developing nations such as Uganda, Nepal, and Ghana, communities in developed countries like Flint, Michigan in the United States, and Indigenous communities, which is our focus for today. In many Indigenous communities, there are drinking water advisories, also known as DWAs. As of 2020, there are 61 long-term drinking water advisories in Canadian Indigenous communities. There are 3 types of DWAs: do not consume, do not use, and boil water advisories. Do not consume advisories are when contaminants in the water cannot be removed through boiling, while do not use advisories are when contaminants present in water that pose a health risk cannot be removed through boiling, and exposure could cause irritation on the skin, nose, and/or eyes. Do not use advisories are also issued when an unknown contaminant has polluted the water supply. However, the majority of DWAs are boil water advisories, which is when the quality of the water may be or is confirmed to be compromised. Thus, disease-causing bacteria, viruses, and/or parasites may be present. The Eabametoong First Nation is an Ojibwe community located north of Thunder Bay in Ontario, Canada. They are one of the many Indigenous communities in Canada that have a long-lasting boil water advisory. This advisory was issued almost 19 years ago in August 2001, and since then, the Eabametoong First Nation has had to go the extra mile to have safe drinking water. So, if we look at Eabametoong and its water crisis, we can see that the main issue they have is the lack of access to safe drinking water, mainly due to their poor water system and existing infrastructure. There was also the recent issue of high levels of disinfection byproducts, DBPs for short, being found in the community's water supply. While both these issues are important and relevant to Eabametoong today, I will be focusing this video on the water disinfection byproducts found in the community's water supply. This is because it is difficult to obtain information about the contaminants in Eabametoong's water supply that require members to have to boil their water, and the prevalence of issues related to this contaminated water, as there are few peer-reviewed studies that contain this data. Like many Indigenous communities, due to their remoteness, the water systems that they have are not the best. Eabametoong's current water system does not provide clean, drinkable water to members. In other words, if they were to use their tap water, they would see that it's a cloudy brown color, clearly indicating its contamination. Thus, Eabametoong has reverse osmosis systems located at 3 of the stations in their community. Reverse osmosis is a process that filters the dirt and the other contaminants from the contaminated water so that only purified water is left behind. While this temporary solution does provide members of the community with drinkable water, they still would have to travel a fair distance to access it. Thus, there are times when members would need to use bottled water to drink, bathe, and cook. Bottled water, however, is expensive and can be even more of a burden to the list of problems members face, such as poverty and housing shortages. This means that when all these options are not available, some members would have to use the contaminated water untreated, which can lead to them getting sick. However, there is not enough evidence to suggest there is a relation between the two in Eabametoong. Okay, now let's learn about these disinfection byproducts found at Eabametoong. In many water treatment plants, chemicals such as chlorine are used to disinfect the water before being used. These levels of chlorine are able to kill harmful organisms that can cause illnesses in people. During this process of disinfection, there are instances where there is a reaction between the chlorine and the natural organic compounds found in the water. This reaction can form what are known as disinfection byproducts, DBPs in short. There are many different types of DBPs, but the most common are trihalomethanes, THMs, and haloacetic acids, HAAs. This is what happened in July 2019 to Eabametoong when their chief, Harvey Yesno, declared a state of emergency as high levels of THMs and HAAs were found at their existing water treatment plant. In this case, the THMs found in the water was between 122% to 182% above Health Canada's safety standard of 100 micrograms per liter, their limit for consumption. The amount of THMs and HAAs formed depends on the amount of natural organic compounds found in the water, the amount of chlorine added, the temperature of the water, and how long the water interacts with the chlorine. With these DBPs, while there are short-term health effects, the long-term effects are much greater and dangerous. These effects are also based on how much DBPs people are exposed to and for how long. In other words, higher levels of DBPs coupled with extended periods of exposure would lead to greater negative health effects. People can be exposed to THMs and haloacetic acids in water through ingestion, so drinking the water, inhalation, so breathing in the evaporated water, and through contact with the skin. It has been found, however, that drinking the water directly poses the highest risk to individuals. At low doses, the health effects of DBPs are unknown. At high levels, however, when exposed, humans can develop central nervous system depression and liver damage. Individuals can also have gastrointestinal infections as well as skin problems, such as eczema and skin cancer, if the DBP levels were extremely high. In the long term, DBPs like THMs and HAAs may be associated with an increased cancer risk in humans. Continuous exposure to DBPs through inhalation and skin contact, such as when showering, were found to have increased an individual's cancer risk by 5 times. This is based on the shower duration and poor ventilation in the room. There are also studies that found an association with increased bladder cancer risk and increasing THM levels and duration of exposure. The bladder cancer incidence was about 40% higher in individuals exposed to over 1,956 micrograms per liter of THMs found in water compared to those exposed to lower levels of THMs. Increased levels of THMs may also increase the risk of myeloma and hormone-dependent cancers, such as prostate, breast, and ovarian cancer. In terms of reproductive health outcomes, there are reports of negative health outcomes after long exposure to THMs. Studies have found relations between high levels of THMs and birth defects. This includes increased risks in cardiac defects, oral cleft defects, and central nervous system defects. Various studies have also reported associations between THMs and effects on fetal growth, such as a lower birth weight than average. It's important to note that while there are studies that have found associations between harmful health risks and THMs, for some of these studies regarding cancer and reproductive risk, researchers have run into the issue of exposure assessment. There's an inconsistent pattern of association and consistency between DBPs and its effects on individuals. Thus, there needs to be more research and studies in regards to the effects DBPs have on individuals' health. This lack of research means we may not necessarily know the exact outcomes Eabametoong will face until 10 to 20 years down the road. If we look at who exactly can be affected by these high levels of DBPs, there isn't a group who wouldn't be affected by long-term exposure of these chemicals. However, vulnerable groups such as children and the elderly would be affected more. Children are likely to see the effects of DBPs if they are continuously exposed, since their bodies are still developing and their immune systems are not as strong as they could be if they were an adult. Children are also more active, meaning they would drink more water and would have to clean themselves more often than adults. The elderly are similar to children in the sense that their weaker immune systems makes them more susceptible to the health implications described previously. However, the THM levels must be very high for an effect to be shown in a short period of time. Men and women also can be affected by these high levels of THMs, but those who already have an increased cancer risk or have issues with their liver may be affected even more. Socioeconomic status can also play a role in THM exposure and health implications. Individuals with lower socioeconomic status tend to be living in situations where infrastructure is poor, which includes issues like overcrowded housing and poor sewage and water systems. This can make them more susceptible to the illnesses that occur from extended THM water exposure. In terms of treatment and prevention, there isn't much that can be done after long-term exposure to DBPs like trihalomethanes. The health implications, like cancer, cannot be cured in a short time period. However, there are things that can be done to decrease the risk of THMs for an individual. If an individual needs to shower using THM-contaminated water, they should lower the amount of time that they shower in a better ventilated area, and try not to shower a lot in a short time period. Doing this can control the human exposure and risk of THMs. If contaminated water needs to be drunk, then individuals can boil the water for at least a minute, or could use special filters that would filter out most of the THMs. Boiling water and using filters, such as carbon filters, can reduce THM levels by 77 to 93% and can reduce cancer risks by 45 to 83%. To prevent the health issues that occur from long-term THM exposure would mean having improved infrastructure in the community and better water systems and treatment plants so that THM levels are low or non-existent. The ideal solution for Eabametoong would be the creation of a new water treatment plant, which is something the Government of Canada had awarded in 2017. The project, which started in 2017, was expected to be completed in early 2019. However, various factors, such as the discovery of THMs and HAAs, had extended the target completion date. On the Government of Canada's website, it states that the new plant will use a rapid sand filtration system, which has low operation and maintenance costs, as well as ultraviolet light and chlorination disinfection systems. This new plant would also help with the high levels of DBPs found in the community's water supply. However, there have been concerns over the new plant and how it would create more wastewater and increase pressure on the community's wastewater lift station. This could lead to the station overflowing in the community's lake, causing even more problems. This station would need to be upgraded. However, Eabametoong has not received funding for it. Therefore, for Eabametoong to not be under a boil water advisory anymore, this water treatment plant should be built. However, the government should also take into account other factors that would be affected, like the wastewater lift station, and fix that as well. If not, their proposed solutions will only be temporary. Overall, THMs can be dangerous for individuals, especially those living under conditions like Eabametoong. This is why the Canadian government needs to help these Indigenous communities so that their health isn't negatively affected more than it already has. While there isn't enough research that can definitively say what illnesses one will get from consuming high levels of THMs, consuming THMs or any other DBP still isn't good for one's health. Therefore, more awareness needs to be brought upon the Eabametoong First Nation community and any other Indigenous community that is suffering from poor infrastructure. So spread the word. Talk to your friends, your family, your teachers. Ask around and try and learn as to why Indigenous communities don't have the same level of attention as developed communities. Ask questions as to why there's a lack of resources in these communities compared to developed areas. Maybe with enough questions asked, more definitive research and associations can be made into this serious issue, and the infrastructure can be improved in these communities for the long term.